she'll do what she must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easily. She knows everything you do because the woman in your life is you.
Hello everybody and welcome to Women's Spaces. My name is Elaine Holtz and I'm your host. And as always, I am so thrilled about today's show. Why? For several reasons. This is the first show of 2014. I want to wish all my viewers and listeners a happy new year. I pray that this year is going to be a year where we see more peace on earth, goodwill to all. We've had some interesting things happening in our community, particularly around the Andy Lopez shooting, and my prayer is for this year is that we find justice for this young boy and that we make some changes in our community to make it a little bit safer. But before we start, I want us to all sit back, relax, and start thinking about self-esteem. What is self-esteem all about? Well, self-esteem for women is recognizing that you are okay no matter what. And what I've developed, and I'm going to tell everybody the story again, is my Women's Spaces pledge. And what's so interesting about the pledge is that it was my grandson, Ryan Jensen. Now wait, I'm just going to do something here. It was my grandson, Ryan Jensen, who actually helped me develop the pledge. One day I was picking him up from school, and all of a sudden he looked at me and he started crying. And I said, Ryan, what's the matter? He says, I'm a bad boy. I said, who told you you were a bad boy? And he said, the teacher. And I said, wait a minute, repeat after me. My self-esteem does not depend on anything outside of me. And that's how it started. And then as I began to develop it and began to talk to him, I added, my self-esteem does not depend on anything outside of me. My self-esteem depends on my relationship with myself and my higher power. So let's all repeat the pledge before we get into a wonderful interview. I have a woman with me by the name of Kate Webb, who is a woman who was in the military and who is working so hard to protect the women in the military and to make sure that they have space and place to be able to report some of the rapes that are going on. I mean, I was shocked when I started finding out some of the statistics. And in talking to Kate, it's just amazing what one woman can do to help other women. But before we get into that, let's do the pledge. Okay, I'm going to flash it on the screen, and here we go. Women's Spaces Pledge. Raise your right hand, everybody. Repeat after me. My self-esteem does not depend on anything outside of me. My self-esteem depends on my relationship with myself and my higher power. Just look at that just for a second. My self-esteem does not depend on anything outside of me. My self-esteem depends on my relationship with myself and my higher power. And you know, for people out there, higher power can mean 100 things. It could mean your doorknob. It could mean Jesus. It could mean God. It could mean the great mystery. For me, I like higher power because there's something in this universe that's powering it all that's a lot bigger and a lot higher than me. Well, we have a lot to cover today, and without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest, Kate Weber. Kate, welcome to Women's Spaces.
Thank you, Elaine. I'm so grateful to be here, and I just love that pledge.
Well, thank you.
It's beautiful.
Well, thank you, and I'm happy to have you here. And before we get into the interview, I want to just tell my listeners, because we're also on radio, and viewers, a little bit about you. Kate Weber, at the age of 17, went into the Army. So she's a U.S. Army veteran, and she's a powerful activist for military rape survivors and an inspiration for those seeking to find their voice after enduring this horrible trauma. And one of the things that's very important to mention about you, Kate, is that this last year in 2013, Kate was given the 2013 Women's Veterans Leader of the Year by the California Department of Veterans Affairs and received her award at the CalVet Women's Veterans Leadership Conference in San Diego. Well, congratulations and welcome to Women's Spaces.
Thank you.
Well, you know, the way I like to start the show out, I mean, we've given our audience a little bit of background, but Anything that you'd like to share about yourself? I know you're a mother. I know there's all kinds of things about you. So just anything you like. You know, it's a women's show, and we love to know about each other.
Sure. Well, I am a mom here living in Sonoma County. I'm just like everybody else with the hustle and bustle in the mornings, trying to safely navigate 3 different schools for 3 different age children. And at the same time, you know, I'm really recently connecting with the community and finding out that my experience and my trauma, which I've just started healing, really healing the last 3 years or so, just immersing myself in recovery and beauty and love and support. And it's taken me a very long time to finally feel like I'm okay. But I'm okay. And so I get to be a mom. I get to continue my advocacy. I've traveled to Washington, D.C. I've done plenty of things here in Sonoma County that just have fed my soul, because I'm so afraid for these men and women that are in the military today. These numbers are higher than what they were when I was in. And so I am like personally affected by the statistics and the calls and cries for help from these young troops who are stuck and have been raped by another service member and have nowhere to go to report it safely without being shut down and told, hey, we know that guy. He wouldn't do that to you. You're brand new. And we've heard this story so many times. So now it's come to fruition in the last 3 years or so, which has just been a gift, in my opinion, from God to give me serenity and peace enough in my life in recovery to be able to be a part of something so huge as the biggest trauma that ever happened to me and the worst neglect of any adults in my life was the Department of Defense and the Army, and how they abandoned me in Germany when I was a brand new private and I was raped by another soldier. So I think the opportunity for me to share that with people here is great, because we have a lot of people wanting to enlist in the military and they feel the crunch of their pocketbook. And I just want to suggest they do a lot of investigating before they enlist.
Well, let's go back a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about, I know you enlisted in the military when you were 17 years old. So I'm going to flash a picture here of you. This is Kate when my goodness, you were so young. There's Kate at 17 years old. She enlisted in the military. What was your motivator? What was your reason for all of a sudden you want to go into the military?
Right. Well, a couple of things. I do come from a military family. I do come from, my grandfather was in the Army in World War II, and I just adored him. And I was very interested in military culture, but not so much so in a historical way, but I was more interested in what women were being able to do in the military. So my joining, I was totally naive. I was watching all the commercials the other women that enlisted in that period of time were watching, and I was sold on a dream. And basically, I was looking forward to learning all of the survival skills. That was huge for some reason to me, to be able to feel adequate enough to stay alive.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say that, because the military, as we know, is a place where we send young people to train them to go to war and to be killers. I mean, that to me is kind of a little simplistic way to put it. So what you're saying is that was not your thought. Your thought was you were getting a different picture, and that was the draw. Explain the picture a little bit. What were they promising to you that made it so attractive?
I think me giving 4 years of my life for them, and in exchange I would get an education and sufficient training to probably provide me a military career for an entire 20 years. And then after that, I would be only 40-something, and then I would retire from that, and I had planned to work at the sheriff's department for a whole nother career, or, I had a bigger plan for me. And, the Tailhook Scandal, which was a huge military sex crime scandal, was in 1993, and that's when I enlisted in the military. And I must say that I do recall thinking when I saw that on the news, it's so good they just got caught, because now they're going to fix it and it won't be a problem anymore. I just remembered that passing through my young mind.
Well, that's interesting because people need to recognize it passed through your young mind. And when we're young, we're idealistic and we tend to believe what's being told to us. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, absolutely. I was definitely sold on a dream.
So what happened? What happened with that dream?
Well, the good news I can say is that now I feel great, but I didn't 3 years ago. And prior to that, I would say I've probably spent 15 good years of my life wasted on not recovering from trauma and being stuck. So I would say I have definitely appreciated my military experience in so many ways, but the trauma overshadowed it for so many years that right now is the newest. This is the time when I'm reconnecting with who I was then when that trauma happened and who I am now, because I lost somewhere in between there. And the VA didn't offer me help. There wasn't mental health. There weren't resources for me.
So I would say the trauma was that you were actually yourself were raped by a military person.
Mm-hmm. I was raped by a finance specialist who I met in uniform around noon or 1 o'clock one day. I had been in Germany for 2 weeks, hadn't received a paycheck. He gave me $1,000 paycheck. I left his office and I knew his last name now, and I felt like I had made a friend. And that evening at a dance club, he was there with his pregnant wife, and he asked me to come outside and talk to him about my paychecks. And when I did that, he took me to a very isolated spot and attacked me, raped me, and left me basically for dead. And I had a fall. I was injured seriously, and I suffer with back pain, since that happened. And so it's the trauma kind of ties up with the recovery. No matter where I go, it's there.
Well, I want to say, Kate, I'm really sorry that happened to you. You're such a strong and such, here a mother and all these things, and to have something like that in your background, I need to just say I'm really sorry that happened to you. But at the same time, it looks like this experience has brought you to a whole new level where you could actually help people. Mm-hmm. Now, you sent me some information, and I was reading, there was a wonderful article. How I found you was through the article in the Press Democrat, mm-hmm. Rohnert Park woman battles military sex crimes. Mm-hmm. And I read it, and I was just shocked. I said, right here in our own community in Rohnert Park, excuse me, we have somebody that went through this trauma, and I wanted to search you out. And what I found out through my own reading and through information that you send, that there were actually, in a period of time, there have been, 26,000 women that have actually been raped in the military, but only 3,374 have come forward. Mm-hmm. And I imagine there's been some prosecutions. Why is that? Why do we have this 26,000 and then only 3,374 that we report? What is the problem here?
Okay, so the chain of command, which is where a private would report to their boss, and the chain of command is a string of supervisors. And what you're asked to do in the military is when this happens, when this trauma happens, that you need to notify your chain of command. And unfortunately, the chain of command sometimes knows the perpetrator or the victim, and they put the kibosh on any reporting before that opportunity presents itself, because they are at the same rank level as the perpetrator possibly.
Oh, wow.
So they're utilizing their friendship as basis for disbelief that this person could have possibly raped. Not him. I know him. He would never do that. He doesn't even like girls like that. Making excuses for their friends. If you do a DNA test, a victim's not going to refuse that if they've been legitimately, violated, and the opportunity needs to be given at the lowest level. And it's not, unfortunately. So what we're trying to do, we being myself, Congresswoman Jackie Speer, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, and many, many other women in leadership roles are writing legislation that makes sense, and it takes rape reporting out of the chain of command so that a victim would actually first report that trauma to a professional, someone who either is a licensed therapist, somebody who's a forensically trained nurse, someone who has immediate access to that victim, because with rape and sexual assault, that DNA evidence doesn't last very long. So it's very important to react at the right time.
So it sounds like what you're saying to me is that when a situation like this happens, which is so traumatic anyway, the woman is best served if she reports it to somebody outside the military, outside the chain of command, because there's no friendship, there's no tie there. And also there's nothing to protect in the unit. You know, here it is, the person has had this issue, they go to the chain of command and they do the investigation.
Correct.
And that's not happening.
No, and it's been really cool, though, to be a part of this evolution that's happening right now, because really that hasn't been the case. There hasn't been anything like that. So in my experience now, I was invited to Fort Lewis, Washington. It's also called Joint Base Lewis McChord, and it's in Washington State. And I flew up there, and we haven't discussed this yet, but I was in that movie, The Invisible War, and I've been asked very many times to go show the film and then speak about it afterward. And that's what we did at Fort Lewis at Washington, and it was amazing to be with the active duty. And the questions they asked us, I mean, these are some of the smartest, coolest people. And these rapists are random specks in between these groups of wonderful people. Our military is made up of some really awesome folks. And it makes me very sad that some of my own comrades actually kind of don't believe that the numbers we're telling them are true. But unfortunately, they are true Department of Defense numbers. And I also wanted to reflect that the number 26,000 reflects that actually is 50% of those victims are male. And that's something that we don't talk about very much. But those victims are not reporting whatsoever. So the females out of the 3,000 and such, even most of those are female reports.
Well, you know, it's amazing how when women start coming forward, you know, everybody benefits. It's very interesting. So this invisible war, just to explain to my viewers and listeners, the invisible war is actually the story about what's going on within the military about women and, like you said, men getting raped, and how it tends to be covered up. Now, do you think the cover up is really intentional, or do you think it's kind of it's ignorance or shock that they don't want to have to face this? What do you think it is?
I have seen so many women soldiers be labeled as sluts after reporting rape. And so I can honestly tell you that I know these people. These are people that I've known now for years. And what I have noticed is that many rape survivors are shut down completely, and just their lives are stopped because they're so afraid because of what just happened to them. But the retaliation makes it so much worse. Now you're afraid to, go out, or this is real mental illness as a result of trauma that the VA hasn't figured out how to treat the patients yet. Being that females are now coming out of the woodwork. I have numbers for in our 5th district here, Sonoma, Contra Costa, Solano County, and all of Napa. We have a veteran population of 45,000, and 8.2% of those veterans are female. So what we're looking at here is a hidden population of women veterans who left the military with discharges such as weight control failure, honorable personality disorder. The background story to that is that they were raped, and when they reported it, they were slowly given counseling statements, put in a position to where they were going to be slowly discharged with some action by their supervisors. So eventually you've had enough write-ups, right, that now you're either a weight control failure or you have mental health problems, and they discharge you. And then you're not eligible for any benefits unless you're in the year 2014, where we've evolved now and are finally giving mental health benefits to military sexual trauma survivors just as well as we are to the combat veterans.
Well, you know, it takes a lot of courage, in my mind, to stand up, particularly when you're standing up against men. I know for myself, I just had an experience myself standing up, and I know that it was so horrendous for me. And I'm a public speaker, and I have a television show, you know, and I do a lot of, you know, stuff that's out there. But man, when you have to stand up to a male and question or debate, something happens, you know. So I know that this must be a real challenge for you. How has it been for you standing up, and where do you get your courage? I mean, where do you get your courage?
I would say that my courage comes from my foundation that I forgot I was given. So when I got, you know, off of all the VA medications like 3 years ago, I was able to have some clarity, and I recognized that, like, I had this wonderful upbringing and a great foundation, and, you know, I was a very hard worker. I got my first job at 13. I graduated high school early because I was managing a yogurt shop and I wanted to join the Army. I was a sharp cookie, and I hadn't given myself any credit for that, and as a matter of fact, I had forgotten. And so it's been really important to me, pretty much since the Invisible War movie came out. It was so necessary in order for me to have the quality of life that I do have now, for my family to see that this ailment that I have, this PTSD thing from being raped by a buddy, you know, to show my parents that my behavior is not odd. And in fact, in this film, they can see all these other veterans are feeling the same way. And now we're coming together and we're doing advocacy and exposing what's been going on. And it's really sad that it's, you know, 18 years later, but I'll take it. Whatever we can do to keep these kids safe.
You know, there's an old saying, it's better late than never. And I love that saying. It's a very good one. You know, we're starting to run out of time. So briefly explain what you mean by advocacy. What is it that you're doing that you're in your advocacy work?
I do just so many different things. I've done media, which is really important in the sense that raising awareness and letting folks know about these statistics, about this film, about the victims that live right near you. And, you know, the fact that we have no real trauma recovery program here for women who are returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. So there aren't any places for us ladies to go. And that's something that I'm advocating toward with this county, Sonoma County especially. I'm hoping that they would be willing to facilitate some sort of a recovery program. Also, my advocacy has brought me to Washington, D.C. several times. I am a volunteer victim advocate for Military Rape Crisis Center, and I tend to phone calls from active duty soldiers who are stuck in a unit, have just been raped or sexually assaulted, and are not getting the help that they need and deserve on the base. And so we do advocacy via phone. Sometimes we show up. And so I do that with a team of other very strong survivors. And then I work for Protect Our Defenders, which is a nonprofit organization that basically is all about raising awareness, and I've done tons of media with them. I spoke at Hastings School of Law about being a survivor, spoke to the lawyers about how they could help us. It's just been, this has just been amazing. It's been unfolding, and I've really just been riding the train. I haven't been running it. It's been great.
Well, it's wonderful because, like you said, you discovered that you have these skills. I mean, you're a great speaker, you're very articulate, you know, you're very, very clear. Well, we're coming to the end of the show, and any support we can give you, anything that you would like to ask of our listening and viewer audience, just go ahead and look at this camera and take about maybe 30 seconds, and anything that you feel is important for our listeners and viewers to hear, please be my guest.
Okay, thanks. I would probably just want to say to any parents, military families, or veterans who might have questions or concerns about any of this stuff, whether they want to be involved in the legislative process and the writing of bills and protecting soldiers, or if you just want to pat me on the shoulder and tell me to keep going, I'll take it, because that's really, I'm looking to pull together a team of women veterans this year, and I believe that's going to happen, and from there we'll be able to pull our sisters out of the foxhole, and one at a time, give each other a big hug.
Well, Kate Weber, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being on Women's Spaces. I want to praise you for your courage, for speaking out. This is a very sensitive subject. And to my women viewers and listeners, wow, what a story. And one of the things that really I heard Kate say very, very strongly, and I would like to repeat it, and that is, any young women out there who are thinking about going into the military, to really investigate, to really find out what it's all about, and make sure that it's something that you can comprehend. There was just an article in the Press Democrat today on January 3rd, which I thought was interesting. Marines failed to meet the bar. And it was talking about women who came into the military, and all of a sudden they start doing all these testing, and they're finding out that maybe they can't make it. Well, maybe if they would have done a little bit more investigation and found out what was expected of them, maybe they wouldn't have to be going through this. And this is trauma. Anytime you're rejected or you feel that you have not done a good job, that's traumatic, especially for us women. We like to do the very, very best job possibly. So that's a lot to think about. And I want to really praise Kate Weber for the work that she's doing. And at the end of the show, when I get all the credits, you'll see her website and her email. And her Facebook. You can become a member or a fan on her Facebook page. And you can also email her if you have any questions or any concerns about her. Well, this has been quite a show for me. It's been quite enlightening to meet Kate. I want to thank all the women out there who do join the military with the idea of protecting and serving. And I hope through work like with Kate Weber is doing, that it'll make it a lot more pleasant and a lot easier for the women who want to serve. And I want to once again say to my women and men viewers and listeners, I want to wish you a happy, joyous New Year. We're in the year of 2014. We have Fukushima is here. We have all kinds of things that are happening with the what's happening in Japan. We have the Andy Lopez shooting here in Sonoma County that hopefully there'll be a charge made. We have our Peace and Justice Center who has a Peace Press, and let me tell you something that lists every nonprofit you can imagine there. So if you want to get involved, the most important thing is the community, is for the community to come together. The community to support people like Kate Weber for what she's doing, to support the Lopez Coalition, the Andy Lopez Coalition, to support them. Fukushima is here to offer them support. There's so many things that we can do, and the one thing we should do is stop complaining and get involved. Anyway, this is Elaine Holtz with Women's Spaces saying thank you so much for watching and listening, and I look forward to being with you the next time.